Happy Saturday, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Wow.
Here we are again.
All our awesome people hanging out in the comments already. Already got a whole bunch of people, Angel, just waiting and ready. Can you see the comments on your side or no?
No, I don't see the comments.
Not on your phone. Oh my goodness. Stan is here.
I can go on my phone, but then I'm constantly like looking down.
Okay. I will tell you who's here so you can hear all the fun people. Stan's here. Wiz is here. Wiz Constrictors. Morphic Exotics. Who else do we have? We have Jerry.
Holly.
We have Holly. We have Jose from Edge of Panic.
Hey.
Look at that. We got a lot of people. Can't wait to see who else joins us. And we have Brian today from Breaking Balls, who we just got to know just a teeny tiny bit just now. Are you excited?
Yeah, let's bring him out.
All right, let's go. Welcome, Brian.
How's it going, everybody?
We are sure happy to have you. Oh, Andrew's here. Hey, Andrew. Look at that. Yeah. Yes, someone says wearing my new swag. I got my new bull python shirt on. These things. Have you seen these, Angel? They're pretty
They're
cool.
from Sammy.
Yeah,
With the
cool.
snakes as the horns. Oh, that's pretty awesome. Plus, it's bright pink. Now you can't miss me anywhere I go, you guys.
Yeah, it's hard to misplace those shirts too.
It is hard to misplace these shirts. I will shine in night. Oh. So, Brian, we are excited to have you here. You're another Pacific Northwest breeder who's been at it way longer than the two of us, but probably a long time like Angel has been, I would have a feeling.
Lifetime Reptiles. I would say professional breeder for about, 13 or 14 years. Somewhere in there.
Okay. How did you pick your name?
Good question. So it's three different things. So my last name's Breaks. So it's not spelled that way, but it's pronounced Breaks. So Breaking Balls. Second, Breaking Balls. We literally are breaking balls. We breed mutations. That's what we do. And third, it's like my favorite show ever. So it's like one of the best shows of all time, I think. So I'll stand on that hill. And I like to treat it like my lab. You know, I'm in there making the best. Like that's what I do. I make that primo stuff, and and that's what I do. So it ties in three ways that way. And then I guess a fourth way, because I broke bad late in life, because I did the hamster race, 9 to 5 for most of my life, and then I finally got to a point where like I got knocked down, and you just get tired of it. So I was like, I'm betting on myself. And I did, like we talked earlier. I pulled out my stocks and 401k and I cashed it in. I was like, I'm going to invest in reptiles and bleed myself. And that's how Breaking Ball started. So
That's awesome. I always wondered how you came up with your name. Now we know the truth.
Lots of meaning.
I love it. We came up with our name because we're just goofballs. So had to do a play on words. We love puns.
Puns and play on words and anything that might seem a little bit clever.
Don't get us going. We can pun for the whole rest of this. It would not be good. We could. Oh man.
So you've been doing it for, you said around 13 years professionally.
Yeah, I think it was 2010-ish. I started getting my first animals. And then breeding, and maybe 2011 is when I first started actually breeding animals I had. And although I guess you could argue I started before that, because I'm one of those people that does the research before. So I was active on forums, just reading and researching I think I registered in like 2007, maybe on Ball Python Net. And actually that's where I met Jerry, who's in the chat right now, a really good friend of mine, another Pacific Northwester who's a super cool guy, and Angel. He's one of the guys that I've done breeding stuff with. And they've always worked out great. In fact, he's a great family friend now. He's Uncle Jerry to my kids. He comes up all the time for UFCs and hangs out. And he's just a good guy. So I met him on the forums back then. And actually, we talked a little bit about mentorship. And he helped me when I first started. And then now it's amazing. We're peers. We both go back to each other for help with things and work that way. So, yeah, that was kind of when I started, for professionally at least.
Okay. And at what point did you realize that you needed to branch out to the other portions of your business that are not specifically ball pythons?
That's a good question. I would say probably like the first 3, 4, 5 years, I was pretty much very motivated on building up the foundation for my ball python projects. I'm kind of old school that way. Like all my snakes came from like hets and things, like, because back then you couldn't just buy a clown, that was like a $5,000, $6,000 snake.
Right.
So I have hets I made stuff with, and once I started producing that first, second generation and making some money off that, I realized that while ball pythons are great, if something ever happened or went wrong or the market had depression, I would need other income to survive that. And so that's when I kind of started branching out in other species. I think king snakes came first, and it was funny. Surprisingly, they're one of the few species I have that sold for way cheaper back then, and now they're like 2, 3, 4 times the price they used to be because they're really popular.
Absolutely. Yeah, they definitely shot up. It was after that. What was it? Black Mexican king just exploded. All like kings and milks just started shooting up again, which is great because they're amazing. They're amazing.
They
snakes.
are.
They're amazing snakes.
They're pretty special to me. I like them, and then I'm big on not wasting. So like as a breeder, you have things that don't work out, and eggs that don't work out, and babies that hatch that maybe have problems, don't feed well, fail to thrive, and I get to enrich my kings by feeding those to my kings, so they thrive, and I'm not wasting the work that I had to do to make all that stuff, which is pretty cool. Boas I branched out into. I want to say a few years after that. Totally on accident. I had my first constrictor was a boa when I was like 9 or 10, but I had given him up because I played soccer competitively and I didn't have enough time for him. But if that 2000, I want to say 15 maybe or 16, there was a US ARC raffle, and I donated to it because I donate to it. Like, and I forgot about it. And then like, I think it was somewhere around the end of the year, like they did the drawing, and I just got blown up. Like every device I had's ringing and going crazy. And I won like a $15,000 credit to BoaFile.
Wow.
And so I was able to invest in like the Key West project. I just got 3 animals and a stack of 3 cages. I don't have a room. We have a small house. I don't have room for like a giant collection of boas, but I invested in those. And then I think maybe it was last year, I made actually some super Key West stuff, which has not really been done. Like there's been a handful that have been made, but I don't think there's been a whole lot made at all. So I kind of took a risk because boas aren't always healthy for supers. And I actually had some issues with that clutch. I lost a few, but some are fine. And so that was boas. And then let's see, green tree pythons came from Ryan Young. He's a Northwest breeder too, and an amazing guy that I would always refer people to. I've always wanted green trees because I want to display animals. And both ball pythons are cool, but they're like cool if you take them out and play with them. They're not cool like to look at really. Mm-hmm. And green trees are like, my company comes over and like they just go straight to the green tree pythons. They're like, whoa,
because they're striking. They're like right there, and depending on how your setup is, I mean, they're on the perch. You can be elaborate, you can be simple, however you want to do it. No matter what your setup is, it doesn't matter. That snake is just
they jump right out of you too.
Yeah,
just boom.
Absolutely.
They are a magnet for sure. And I really like the locality stuff, and specifically for some of the green tree stuff. And then I think after that is when I finally decided to go into Gila monsters, because they've been a favorite of mine since I think I was 2 or 3. I got like a zoo book at our local zoo, and it had Gila monsters in it, and I fell in love with them even back then. There was like a story about a miner getting bit by one or something. I'm sure everyone's seen that story. And I just fell in love with them. So I started researching those, and I was able to go to Steve at Pro Breeders and get his Utah banded stuff. He just makes some of the wildest, most anomalous Gilas with colors ranging from like chalk white to like the deepest salmons. And I was drawn to that. And so I decided to invest in those. And I've slowly been adding to my Gila collection. And I see that being a good thing going forward because they're in such high demand. There's never enough of them, especially real high end ones. And they're just so much fun. They're real interactive animals. You wouldn't think so. They look very simple, but they're so smart. I just love, my daughters love going to the cages, and they just sit and watch them, and they come over and check you out. Like they don't even defense mode anymore. They're cool. So I'm really passionate about some of those other species I do too.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, that's an impressive list of stuff.
It is.
Keeps
It's a
me
good
busy.
list of stuff.
It's almost hard not to diversify the longer that you're in the hobby, whether you have, balls or colubrids, whatever it is you have. Every time you go to a show, you see something different. It's hard. It's just hard. It's hard to say, oh, I only have snakes. I only have lizards. You go to a show, you end up coming home with a pygmy possum.
Right.
You know, there's always something. There's always something that you're like, oh shit, I've never seen that before.
Yeah,
the person with the micro squirrels.
Yeah,
that was crazy. You know, like that's the thing. The shows are very different, but I mean, you've been around long enough, you know that shows used to be really crazy, lots of crazy stuff. Then it kind of died down, and now we're starting to see, you know, a little bit more diversity. But it was the Wild West. You remember that? It was nuts. It was nuts.
Yeah,
Giant snapping turtles and like just the craziest shit. Baby alligators. Go ahead, buy a baby alligator. There it is. Just go ahead.
Oh my god.
Yeah, there's that fine line though between like diversifying and then you get like that acquisition syndrome where you just want something to want something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important that people straddle that line, because I see people who are like, oh, I got this and this and this and this, and you're like, these people are set up for failure. You know, like you can see it coming a mile away. Like they're 3 months in and they got 40 species, you know, and you're like, this is not a good idea. And sometimes you crash and burn. So it's important to be well planned. I'm a very planned person. I'm methodical, and I usually have a business plan in addition to care and husbandry plans before I diversify into anything. So it's important to.
That's usually like the first thing is that, you know, for me, and like I'll ask a person too, you know, for me it's like I need to know everything about this thing.
Mm-hmm.
I need to know everything about this animal before I even think of that. You know, not only just keep it, but to reproduce it, and then to, you know, if I'm going to sell any babies and so on. But like, I need to make sure I can take care of this animal. So whenever I talk to people, I need them to feel that same mindset too, because if they're not feeling like they can take care of this animal, what's the point? You know, something bad's going to happen, you know, and that's the same thing. And then, you know, most of us just go down that rabbit hole of like, how do I make this work? How do I make this fit?
And you want people to succeed. Like that's me. I want people to succeed, because if they have a good experience, then maybe they just start out with a pet, but they want another pet, you know? And so I'll get a lot of repeat business that way, because I don't just like pump and dump animals to people. Like I'll sometimes spend a month with a person with like a $50 like low end animal that it's their first pet, you know? And like, we have to just tweak everything to get it feeding and get their humidity right. But I think it's vital as breeders and people who are hopefully invested in this hobby and these animals to do things right by investing in people who maybe don't know exactly what they're doing. You know, like I can't tell how many people I've had stop doing fish tanks and go to just a basic tub. And they're like, well, what do you mean that's the best way? And I'm like, yeah, it's like a quarter of the cost. You can just put an inexpensive thermostat and a heat mat and you'll be perfect. And they're like, but I had this 50-gallon breeder tank. And I'm like, your baby snake will not do good in that, you know? Right. So you have to have those conversations with people. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And if it doesn't, usually they come back and go, so how do I set up a tub? And and then you get them on the right track. So
did you see Ryan just hopped on for a second? They're getting on their plane to go to Hawaii, but he wanted to make sure he hopped in.
Yeah, have a safe
flight.
flight.
Say hello to you.
I hope it's not a Boeing.
Hey,
ooh, easy.
He works at Boeing.
I have lots of friends that work there, but take a jab.
Yeah, he can take a jab with the best of them. Don't you worry.
Hopefully it's not United there.
Right. There you go.
Hopefully it doesn't have that door panel.
Yeah, no door panel.
Yeah, I heard you get a discount if you hold the door on during the flight.
You get your next flight free.
There you go.
If you survive.
The security lets through basic hand tools so you can maintain the plane while you're on flight.
I usually have duct tape and zip ties just in case.
Oh, there you go. Angel will fix the plane as you're flying.
Totally fine.
Yeah, glue and tape. That's what we're doing.
But speaking of Ryan, before we went on here, we got to chat about it, but now we can chat with everybody else about mentorship and how important it is to have a mentor. And Ryan definitely looks up to you as one of those people. And Great Balls of Fire wrote us and was really excited that you were coming on, because he said that he has learned everything he knows from you. And he's a great guy, because we have several snakes from him in the rack behind us back here.
Good.
So
they could have ties to me then. He has a lot.
They might have ties to you for sure.
Those are both really good guys, and they were just guys who I could, like. I remember, I think I sold Matt's dad their first snake. We met in a parking lot, and like I could tell right away they were just super cool dudes, and from there it just kind of built. And they have quite a few snakes for me, but I could just tell like Ryan's one of those guys. He's always really curious and he wants to know the right answer, and he's okay with hearing that's not the right way to do it. Like some people, they have a hard time accepting that, you know, like they get stuck kind of in a way, and we all do it, you know. You kind of get that rut where you're like, oh, it's working, but it's not ideal. And Ryan's not that way. Like we'll have conversations and you can tell sometimes he might be like, well, okay, it's not exactly what I want to hear, but maybe it's what I need to hear. And every single time he'll come back with, we'll talk about it and exchange ideas, and it'll get him a new perspective to think about things. And so I like people like that, because to me, it means he cares and he wants to do better. You don't have to be perfect. None of us are. I still make mistakes all the time, but I always want to be better. So I'll listen to other people, and I always try to base my experience on, or I give my opinion based on my experience. Like, one of the biggest things is like red flag for me is when someone like tells you stuff and it's like off a care sheet, or if it's off something else, because it's wrong a lot of times. So what I like to tell people is, based on my experience, this is how it works for me. There could be other ways to do it, but this works really well. And this is why I've tried this way or this way or this way. This is what I've settled on, because I like to do things efficiently and the best for the animals. And so when people like Ryan want to, or even Jason, when they want to learn and they come with those questions, it's important to not only give them the answer, but to give them that foundation of how I got there. And this is why I now do this, because I've done this, this, and this, and it works, but it doesn't work ideally. And kind of like we talked earlier, it's important to invest that time into these relationships. There are people who are customers at one point, but now they're like super good friends. Like, they come over, my daughter draws pictures for them, when they visit, and they come over for barbecues, and we watch UFCs together. And like, that's how they become important parts of my life. And Jason too, with Great Balls of Fire, he's the same way. We're obviously geographically limited in the amount of interactions we can have like that. But maybe we talk about space flights. We watch like the SpaceX launches together. Like, we're super nerds. I'll wake up at 5 a.m. with my daughter. We make pancakes and watch SpaceX launch, and he's on too. And like, we'll be chatting online, talking about it. Like, you find people have a lot of common interests too, which I think is an amazing part about the reptile hobby. Is there's such a divisiveness in our nation, the whole world sometimes. But what you do a lot of times when you find a common ground like this is you find out that more people, more often than not, have more things in common within you than they don't. Just because we disagree on this or that doesn't mean that like 90% of the rest of the stuff that we're on the same page with. And so I love that. I get different opinions from different people and different perspectives. And so I learn a lot from mentoring people too. Like, it's not just a one-way relationship where like they're just getting things from me. I learned so much, because of things they do, or maybe new ways they figure things out too that help me out. So
yeah, we were talking about that before, about it's growth, right? It's growth. It's growth on both sides. This person is getting this wave of information that we have. We're just like, sometimes I feel like I'm dumping on people like all this info.
I agree.
and I usually tell people, I'm like, whatever you remember is great. What you don't remember, just ask. That's fine. I don't expect you to remember everything. I'm here. I'm available. Ask questions. But then there's that other thing we were talking about, that reverse, like how like I was saying like, oh, I haven't done leopard geckos in a long time, or this particular animal for a long time. And then I start talking to someone, then they start telling me about stuff that I've been out of the loop with the leopards or cresteds or whatever. And like a friend of mine, he's big into cresteds, and he was telling me about all of this stuff like 2 years ago. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking. He's sending me pictures. I'm like, I don't see what you see, because with those things that they're, they have all those little nuances. So I don't see a lot of that stuff. But since that's what he does, he sees it all, and I'm learning something that I did way before he did. Then I stopped doing it. He does it now. And now I feel completely like a noob. I'm like, I have no idea about any of this stuff. And it's fun to listen, because I remember when we didn't know shit about cresteds, but it's fun. And when we get these relationships with these newer keepers, they can last forever. Get them, get them in the hobby, give them the information they need.
I can tell you that we are newer because we're only 3 years in.
Working on
3 years. And we bought a snake from Ryan and Rachel in the parking lot of a Best Buy parking lot. And Ryan has been there for us every step of the way. We are finally going to have our first fetch with the guy that we got from Ryan, but he helped us as I panicked and got an egg box ready because Kurt was at work and I had to get the really angry mama snake out all by myself. Here I thought, Kurt will be home. It'll be great. No, there was me with this really angry snake, and Thorin was only like 3 then. And no, he was only like 2.
Yeah, and he wants to see.
And he wants to go up and see what the snake's doing. And I've got this mad mommy snake who's peeing everywhere and trying to bite me, and she's not nice anyway in the first place. And Ryan's chatting with me and trying to tell me it's going to be okay.
And Ryan's one of those guys as well that if you whenever you write him, he almost writes you back instantly. unless he's doing something work related or super busy and can't. I mean, it is instantaneous.
Yeah, and Angel and Ryan have some really good chats.
Yes, we do.
They go down the genetics wormholes.
We talk on IG all the time too. We're always messaging each other about something. But you see what's going on here, Ryan. Is teaching you what he learned.
Absolutely,
Ryan.
We are so grateful for him.
Yeah, and that's that path of learning, from one to the next to the next to the next, And
that's one of the great things that is offered. That's I wouldn't say offered, but that people are starting to do more frequently now is pass along the knowledge, point you in the right direction, not just marry you.
It wasn't always like that. So when I first started, you would frequently have people that would give you false information on purpose. And it was so competitive because, like pastels were a couple $1,000s. So it was like, if you got a clutch, you're taking like 10 grand from a guy, not like $500, $600, $700 like nowadays, And so people were honestly like cutthroat, or they'd kind of redirect and not tell you what you were looking for, And I've always had a problem with that because the animals matter to me. So if I can tell someone a better way to do something and it makes the animals be better, like that's what we're all trying to do. You know what I mean? So it's important.
I mean, look at the spider. A lot of people that originally bred spiders, they knew there was an issue, but they didn't say anything. And do spiders live and thrive and live for, and breed? And I mean, yeah, they're great. But a lot of the breeders back then, and I'm not talking about like top breeders, a lot of people that kind of bought in a little bit later in middle, when they were still kind of up there, and people were discussing that. A lot of people were like, like people didn't want to bring it out there. They didn't want to mention it, especially with the whole, the pearl, the super being, lethal combo and so on. So that already gave it like this negative connotation. And then they're like, oh, now it has this wobble. Like, I'm talking about it, And now that's why we're here today. I think if we were honest about it from the beginning, maybe it wouldn't have been so bad. I don't know.
It still goes on. So, I mean, that whole complex has issues, even spot nose and chocolates and Hinginwomas, like they all have various slight neurological issues, and some express it more than others. But I'll have people that have no idea about it. Like no one ever talked to them. Champagne, like all those have slight neurological issues. And like you said, most of them, now sometimes there's extreme examples, but most do thrive, they breed, they're fine. But some don't, and so people aren't prepared for that, especially like it's what I've noticed with that specifically is it's not a constant. Some could be great from the bat, and as they age or breed, something happens, that stress from breeding. And that snake that was fine for 3-4 years had a couple of clutches, and now it's super wonky. It'll spiral, just real weird stuff. And so people aren't prepared for that because there wasn't the open dialogue, like you said. And we did a disservice to ourselves and the whole hobby by trying to hide that. It should have been open and honest up front. Then if someone knew what they were getting into and they decided to do that, that's a different story than opening up a tub and you have a snake upside down, you think it's dead, and it's just one of those being kind of wonky, So
it's like what's that enigma in leopards? Like that one was hot and then stopped being hot right away. Why? Because there was no denying there was a problem with that animal. All they did was spin. They spun in circles. They head tilted. It wasn't as minor or gradual as, like, let's say like a spider where people are like, I never noticed it, or like I see a little bit here and there. But those enigmas, they just spin. Like, they're gorgeous animals. They're beautiful, but I wouldn't breed them. I mean, that just seems problematic.
Yeah, that's a good example.
Josh wrote, I breed snakes and rodents for a living. I have a neurological issue. No, you don't.
And then there's one we share.
Yeah, it is one we all share.
Good company.
Yeah, good company. Brian, do you breed your own rodents?
Long story short, no, I used to. And
okay.
The rodent specific is an exposure allergy. So I had cat allergies my whole life, and cats and rats have similar dander. And so I did it for about 6 years. I bred a lot of rodents, and I was actually planning on opening a rodent business because, let's be honest, there's really not a whole lot of big sources of reliable rodents here in the Pacific Northwest, at least not on the level I'm talking about. Like, I can't go to someone. I struggled for years, like dealing with smaller rodent breeders. And there's no one I can go to and be like, hey, I need 300 or 400 rodents. You know what I mean? Like, it's not possible up here. So there's a huge market hole for that, which is a different story. But the exposure allergy got so bad, and I didn't realize it. I just thought kind of, hey, I'm out of shape. You know, I should be doing more cardio. And it got so bad one night that I went hypoxic. I had blue lips and white.
Really?
I was building a rack for somebody. Actually, I used to do PVC racks for people. And I went hypoxic, and I literally was going to have to go to the ER because I couldn't breathe. Wow. Thank God a family member had an inhaler, and they gave it to me, and we put 2 and 2 together. After that, I saw the doctor, and he's like, dude, he's like, you have to quit. He's like, you're going to die if you keep this up. So even now it's bad. Like to feed my animals, I have to wear a respirator, and I have to like shower immediately. I have to keep all my dander like low. I have to like be careful about my clothes when I dispose of like anything that's touched rodents. I have to be like hazmat kind of like it's that bad. And it sucks because I would have had an unlimited amount of income and rodents, which is a vital to most people's success. And now instead I have to outsource all that. And it's my highest expense, you know, is rodents.
What about ASFs?
I bred those too. And I can't say specifically whether they had allergy issues with me because I was doing mice, ASF, and rats, and I was never at a point where I could just focus on one or the other. I kind of had to have all three. So they might be better, but I don't know. I'm not really in a spot to test that. But at some point in the future, I might have to get back into it just because rodents can run me out of business. Like that's how bad my feed expense is, you know?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you need $300-400 a week, it gets very expensive.
Yeah. I'm like $1,000 a feeding probably for my collection. So it adds up really fast. So
even us with our small collection, it was like what, $400 a week, $450.
It's a lot.
So
that was on the low end, but yeah.
And that's also part of what we were talking about too, as far as like the business models and things like that. You like that rodent bill is a huge part. It's a huge part of the business part. You know, if you are going to collect to a point where you want to start a business and you're a breeder and all that, that's great. But that rodent bill is going to come at you, and it is going to come at you like a freight train. And you got to feed them. You got to, if you expect to produce animals, you got to feed them. That's it.
Yep. That's nothing to add there. That's totally correct.
Yeah, that's where the tax codes come into play, right? Write them off as an expense.
Yeah, thankfully I'm a legit business, so I write off so much stuff. It's ridiculous. So I mean, you name it, I pretty much write it off. My mortgage, part of my everything, because I'm a home business. So we're really good at that. So we're able to write off the majority of my income, and then most of my money's put back into animals and reinvesting in my collection. So the smart way for me to do it, at least.
Yeah, at what point did you know that you needed to become a legit business? Like what year was that?
So the cutoff for a hobby with the IRS is about $10,000, I believe, off the top of my head. So when you have, even back then at least, like you could breed clowns and like simple combo clowns, and they're $1,000 to $1,500, $2,000 a piece. So I mean, you figure just a couple clutches, and you're kind of at that threshold. But with a hobby, you still can write off some things. So you have to be able to make money beyond that. So I think I was like year maybe 3 or 4 is when I started to exceed that threshold enough that I wasn't comfortable. I'm not going to give anyone tax advice. Some people really stretch that, but it's not a good idea to me because I see myself being around a long time. Like if you were going to be in it for 2-3 years, I'm sure most people would just make whatever money, never claim it. But if you're going to be around a long time, if you ever lie or get caught on that stuff, they're going to forensic investigate you, and they'll go back through all your accounts, all your credit cards, all your everything, and they'll know right away if you were lying, and you'll be stuck with a huge tax deficit. So, but it's that $10,000 mark. And again, I believe that's after expenses and things. So I want to say I was like maybe 3 or 4 years where I went from straight hobbyist to business, but I can't quite remember because I've had my business license that whole time. It's just the amount threshold that you make is ultimately what determines the bracket you fall into.
Well, Angel's getting ready to go that route soon. So, right, Angel?
Just get a good accountant. So it's there's so many little things. It's worth we have a really good accountant. I think she's only $300 or $400, and it's like one of the things I don't even think twice about because she takes that liability. So I am honest with her. Hey, this is this, and this is what we write off. And she's cool. Like she'll tell you, hey, you can do 20% of your mortgage, 20% of your utilities, 20%. She gives me all the stuff to go off of, and then I kind of plop the numbers in. But since she preps and does my taxes, she's taking the liability on that in case something's. Now I have to give her accurate information, but in the end, she's the one telling me you can do this, and this, and it's worth that money to cover yourself. So, I mean, I know it's tempting to kind of fill it in online in your own tax thing, but when something's wrong, they're coming straight to you, you know, like instead now I'm like, well, she deals with the IRS if they have a question on something. And then she calls me and says, hey, what did we put here or there? And we get it all sorted out. So that would be my advice to anyone starting into legit business side of things is just pay the money to an accountant and find someone good. Like me and my wife both have our own businesses, and we've gone through several accountants because we've had people who weren't doing things right. And you don't want that because it'll backlog real fast. And when you have 2-3 years of something getting screwed up and then you owe a lot of money, people will go out of business like that. So definitely find a good accountant.
Yeah, I might have to borrow yours.
Yeah, she's really good. So she's really good. And it's
you guys
insane.
live in the same vicinity, right? Are you Angel's in Tacoma?
I'm in Ruston, so Tacoma basically.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm right at a university place, so I'm not far.
Yep, that's where my wife's office is.
Now, Brian, where do you sell mostly through? Because you don't do expos, right?
Yeah, I knew this would come up. So I like shows. I did them for the first 4 or 5 years of my existence, and they're awesome because you sell a lot of cash.
Yeah.
You sell a lot of cash. That's why they're really awesome. And so that's pretty sweet when you're a business because that can be, but the biggest problems I have with shows are pathogens. So with me and where I'm at and the amount of money that I have in my collection and the amount of unique, irreplaceable animals I have that I've made over the last 12 or 13 years, the risk to reward for me isn't worth it. So like my experience at least, and I know people have different experiences, but our shows here are different than the rest of the United States. My sales at shows typically tend to be the stuff that I normally might wholesale. That's like $75 to $500. That segment right there for me is great for local stuff. But the problem is when you go to a show, you should have an offsite quarantine that every animal that goes to that show should live at. And I'm going to tell you that I know for a fact that probably 95 or more % of this hobby doesn't do that. I do. So I'm fortunate enough to have an offsite quarantine location. So when I take new animals in, they live there for anywhere from 9 months to a year most times. I don't rush things because I've got so much work in my animals, in my collection, and what I've built through these unique combinations of genes that I can't replace them. Like, so if I lost part of my collection, I'd just be SOL. I'd have to start grinding away back at zero, which not because of pathogens, but I've had to do that before. And it's not fun, you know, like when someone sold me something that wasn't what they said it was, or had other things going on that I didn't want anywhere near my projects. Like that's happened to me before. And I don't hesitate to cull that all out of my collection and restart. I had to do it with vanilla, which I know is a hot button for you, Angel. I had to do that with my vanilla. I was totally screwed on that project by a big name breeder who lied to me. I've had it happen with with Xanthic stuff. I've had it happen with other genes. My Ultramel project, like I was in the Ultramel project since like the start. Like I have a Noah imported Ultramel that came from Noah, and he was like $3,000 back in the day. And guess what? That snake had unknown hets in him. So I started popping up random stuff in my project that shouldn't be there. And it all traced back to that animal. So I had to take almost a decade of work on Ultramel and send it off. So that's like painful. So that hurts. But I'm kind of rambling now about something else. But shows and pathogens ultimately is what terrifies me. So like I'm the guy that would go to the show and like I use a can of spray of mites on my table. I put a barrier around my table. The bedding goes into a trash can and I spray it with bedding a couple days before and I shake it all around so it's dry. They're all in that because there are mites that are resistant to pesticide. And I know breeders who have lost their entire collections to them, like good friends of mine. In fact, my mentor, and I'm not going to say his name, but he lost probably 300 plus animals to pesticide resistant mites. And like this guy knows what he's doing. He taught me what I'm doing. In fact, he is a vet tech and like he does surgeries for the vet. The vet supervises him. Like he's a pro and he lost his collection to that. And that was from a local show around here. So that happened to him, and it was a wake up call for me that like, hey, that's sweet to make that pocket money on a weekend. And I love socializing. Like I like talking with people. It's what I do. It's what I did my whole life in my career. But like, I'm at a point in my collection and my business that I cannot risk that. Even with offsite quarantine, it still scares me. So I don't do shows anymore, but I do mainly Morph Market. And then I have a handful of people in my network that I take the animals that normally would have went to shows and I send them to them, usually on a commission basis where we'll do a split. If I don't quite get wholesale, I'll get better than wholesale usually from them because of the quality of animals. And then if they are willing to, if they're willing to do just nothing out of hand and they want me to just front the animals from them, then usually we get a decent split on that. And so the lower end stuff, I say lower end, and I don't mean that to offend anyone. I know everyone's budget's differently, but that stuff for me is hard for me to take the time to take care of and do for like a long period of time because you could have it for X amount of dollars. So it's worth it to me to take a hit on that and then send it to my friends who might sell it at shows and other things. So that's where my stuff, that kind of that sub $500 stuff, all goes that way pretty much. I'll put some up on my page because I do like to have some offerings for local people. I've met a lot of cool people that way, parking lot meets and stuff. And even though they end up usually almost always, they end up like my highest workload. I almost always have to like take weeks getting their enclosures set up and doing everything. But I've met a lot of cool people that way too. But Morph Market's probably my biggest thing. And then I'm super fortunate too, because I deal with the genetics I deal with and my attention to quality. Like I'm really fickle on what I'll add. Like it'll take me years to add genes sometimes because I have an ideal that I like to hold that gene to. So I don't just buy the best deal. I buy the best snake, and it doesn't matter if it's twice the price of all the other ones. For me, it doesn't matter because that snake's going to be my foundation for all my projects. So I have an attention to detail. I don't know if it's just a personality thing or what, but I have a lot of micro observations I'll make on animals, so I can pick apart quality animals better than most people. And I will be patient and find just the best animal to build a project on, and especially because I specialize in multi-recessives. So I don't want to spend 10 years building a multi-recessive project and I get my end game there and it's like I'm disappointed because I used like an ugly version of something. Like that would just kill me. So I'm anal about just making sure that it's the best example of something that I use, and it usually shows on my animals. So I sell a ton of animals that way too. People just know me, like my friends in my network. I'll share a picture with just them and I don't even have to advertise the animals. They sell out of the egg. People are like, yeah, I want that, or that. So yeah. I'm fortunate that way. So I sell a lot of the higher end animals that way. And then whatever's left over ends up on Morph Market. So,
I mean, we've talked about it on here before, especially with Ryan about, quality, and if you're breeding, for this quality, if you're trying to add things to your collection, if you're trying to produce really nice animals and buy really nice animals, and, we talked about line breeding to make nicer looking animals versus just making animals. Like I can go out and buy a 3-gene, 4-gene snake, and that's great, and I can probably get it for a deal. I can get it at an auction or something, but it's that snake that I keep looking at every single day that I keep, I go to, when I think of Morph Market, that's the snake I think of. I want to go look at it. I want to, do that thing of like, did somebody buy it? Please tell me somebody bought that. Cause I don't want to buy that right now. Like, you look at it so much, like it takes me 3 hours to buy a pair of pants. So I need to it takes me forever to add a gene first of all. And then I need to find the one I really want. And then I have to find who I want it from. Like it takes me forever to add stuff. My wife is like, did you buy that shit yet? And I'm like, no, I'm still looking. Like, and then I might miss out. I might, I might, and that's okay. That's okay. Then it wasn't meant to be. It's fine. I'll move on. But that's that whole thing of like, you want to produce nice animals, then you should work with nice animals, whether you've made them, whether you bought them, whether your friend has a nice version of something and you have a nice version and you did a loan together or something. That I think needs to come, that I feel needs to happen more, or that needs to be somewhat of more of a driving force of what we're doing now versus just putting a bunch of combos together to make a bunch of shit.
That's the golden nugget advice, especially if you want to be a breeder in the future as your business. That's that statement of don't just buy the best quality you can find, because it will pay you back in the future well beyond what you spent on that original animal. And a lot of people don't get that advice.
It does,
Sometimes it
yes.
pays to wait. Just, you know, if you knew a breeder this year that produced a 3 gene animal and you were like, wow, I want that, and you go to buy it and they're sold out, I'm not going to the next person that has the same 3 genes. I've waited because I want this from this person, or I want this version of this from this person, because
it's worth it to get on that waiting list.
That's what I want. And you have to do that, you know. So if you're out a year, maybe 2, that's okay. You still, it's about getting what you want, because you know that's what's going to push your project forward.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot more to say. That you hit all the major points, and it makes a difference. So, like an example of how this worked out for me. So I made the first high intensity Orange Dream ghost stuff in the world, and it's because I took 3 years to add Orange Dream. I needed the perfect animal, and so for some reason my eye picked up on an animal that stood above all the rest. Well, in retro, I didn't know it at the time, but the animal I purchased was high intensity Orange Dream. And how we were able to trace that was because it came from Brian Sharp, who's been around for, I don't know, 50 years or something crazy. He's been around forever. He talked Ozzy out of one of Ozzy's first Super Orange Dreams. That clutch that made Ozzy's first Super Orange Dreams was where he traced the Hio D2. So he had the Orange Dream male, he had bred to a pastel yellow belly female. And that's how the high intensity Orange Dream stuff happened. It came from that pairing. Well, the female from that is what made the first supers. So like Mark Mandic up in Canada, he has high intensity as well. Brian Sharp had high intensity. And so my eye caught that. And this is before we even knew about the story behind all that stuff. But my attention to detail caught that. So I bought one of those snakes after waiting years to find the right one. And guess what? I went to try to make hets for Ghost. I'm a huge hypo fan. And instead of making hets, I made homozygous stuff. And like Ozzy saw me post it and he was like, hey, can I call and talk? And so we sat and talked for a couple hours that night, and we went through all the lineage, and we traced it back to where it came from. He knew Brian Sharp, of course. They've done tons of business together. They're in the same area. And it was super cool because my animals just stood out immediately, like enough that they're showstoppers. So I have like racks full of high intensity Orange Dream Ghost combos that like nobody has. And so now I'm using all those to breed into my Ghost Clown stuff, my DG Ghost stuff, my Pied Ghost stuff, my VPI Exanthic Ghost stuff. And then all those are all combining together for other various triple and quads recessives. And so like I have a huge foot ahead of everybody because no one can get that stuff from anybody at me and the handful of customers I've sold to. So it's pretty cool. Now like some of my customers, like Ryan has some high intensity stuff for me. Jerry, who's in chat right now, has quite a bit of high intensity stuff for me. And then I have a friend in Florida, and those guys have like some of the only other high intensity Orange Dream Ghost stuff that's out of my collection. And now it's cool because they're breeding it into other projects. And so now I'm starting to see what happens when they mix it with other things. And most of those guys are super smart. Like they keep it all separate. They're not mixing it with just random Orange Dream. And I don't know if you guys follow RGI, the reptile genetics stuff, but now I'm actually sending them sheds of all my high intensity Orange Dream stuff because they're on the hunt to figure out what's going on there. And I can't get into details because I don't have a lot, but there's some really cool stuff happening in that project that they're starting to hash out now in the genetics laboratory. And I think some people are going to be
recently.
Yeah, they're figuring some stuff out, and it's not, some people were like, oh, it's just high quality stuff. And I'm like, no, I noticed right away, like I started making animals and like some stood out over the other ones, even the same exact combo from the exact same clutch. So I knew something was going on because I kind of have an eye for that. And it looks like we're right, that there's definitely something going on there. And so hopefully we can keep sending them sheds in and they can keep kind of tracking this down the path till we figure out an answer. But I think there's going to be really good stuff coming from that project moving forward. So
it's good. The RGI, the genetic testing, it's a game changer. I know a lot of people weren't like really thrilled about it at first. I think it's great. It helps a lot of us figure out some stuff. It helps us kind of fill in the holes, you know, and you might have an animal that you 100% think is one thing, and then you get it back and you're like, we've never seen, it's not coming up on any of that. You may have something new, or it's really good that we have this. And now we have a couple different ones, if you know, to choose from. But I like the way RGI does. I follow them. I watch their videos every week. So on.
Yep. Too. They always share information, which is big to me. You know, like they don't hide stuff.
I love
they don't
that.
keep it to themselves. So
I love that. It's very different than it was 20 years ago. That's for sure.
Yes, it is.
Can you imagine RGI 20 years ago?
they would have changed the game. So, and they already are changing the game, but
absolutely.
And another way you can use that too. So like in my instance is these projects where I unintentionally had things in my project I didn't want. Well, now when I have a high-end investment snake I buy, I can run a test on them and I can find out right away it's got this, and I don't want that in my project. So it could have, what they're doing now, if you're smart about it, when you're setting up a foundation to a project, it could be worth that money just to spend, because then you could find out if there's that ingredient that you don't want or a random het that maybe isn't ideal for your project. So I'm looking at it now and I'm like, if they would have had this 10 years ago or 12 years ago, or however long, I could have saved myself a decade of work that I had to sell off on
or even an incomplete dominant. There could be an incomplete dominant in this animal that's hidden. You know, you see some of these other genes that are really strong and they kind of cover it completely. You never know. Someone's like, oh, it's just 3 genes, and you find out it's like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Because you didn't see it. It was you bought a super fire and it had, I don't know, something else in it, but you can't tell.
Or honey,
white.
like cypress and honey. Honey is, I hate it. I'm sorry. I know some people love it, but they look like normals and they make white snakes. And that to me is terrifying. I hate making white snakes. It's not something I do. Honey is one that I got screwed on big time. Like I had a real high-end trade I did with somebody. I ended up with 2 snakes from them. And I was like, there's no honey here, right? Oh no, no honey, no honey. Both snakes ended up having honey, and I had made all sorts of hets and other animals off of it. And I got stuck with all this stuff that I don't want, because now I can't breed it to any of my other bell complex animals. So I had to restart that whole project again. And it's like, I've had so many times of doing that over the years where it's frustrating for me because I'm so well planned out. And a lot of times I'm building puzzle pieces to put together. So I don't know about that stuff until I start putting generations together that could be 2, 3, 4 generations old before I start combining those ingredients. And then I'm like, what the hell is happening here? And it's all because of that. So I think genetic testing is good for that too. So
it is, especially
I
if
was
you're
listening
adding
to somebody
to animals that are not common.
Yeah. Yep. Or building multi-recessives, for instance, in me, they're really long, complicated projects. So
you said hets. I was listening to somebody recently talk about how they found het albino in their snake the 3rd year. So that here they're getting ready to just pump out all these really quality animals, and now they're all albino. Yeah. So kind of wiped that whole project out.
Yeah. That's what happened to me in my ultramel. My ultramel ended up het albino. And so I started making albino ultramels, and I'm like, where's this coming from? For a while, it was only from a certain pairing. So I thought it might've been a mom to another snake, but sure enough, I started making albino ultramels het pied off of a totally unrelated animals. And I was able to trace it back to my founding ultramel animal. So I had to restart that entire project. So it set me back, I think, over a decade. So pretty bad.
Yeah, that's brutal.
You were talking about before, you had like 2 or 3 projects you had to do that with.
Yeah.
Just kind of get out. Yeah.
Yeah, the vanilla, which I wasn't familiar with you, but Ryan was saying you're big on vanilla. And I've been beating the vanilla drum for the entire time I've been around. So back in like 2011, I think I spent like $3,000 on a super vanilla hypo, and from a well-known person I won't get into because I'm not that kind of way, but they guaranteed it was compatible with standard line hypo, which is what I have, like Orange Ghost hypo stuff. My Orange Ghost stuff is all actually from Casey Lazick from imported, and then it's crossed to an Nerd Orange Ghost that came from Garrick DeMeyer. I had hets and I made all my own Orange Ghost stuff. I have like some of the nicest Orange Ghost stuff around. Well, he guaranteed it was compatible to me, and I'm like, are you sure? You know, I know some people said it isn't. He's like, oh, they don't know what they're talking about. We've done it all the time. And so I bought the super vanilla hypo, and it was really expensive. He's like $3,000. And then I bought another vanilla hypo, something female from him. I think a honeybee or something, which is vanilla hypo spider. And I bred him to like clowns and other stuff to try to make all multi-hets for things. And then I bred it to some Orange Ghost stuff, like a couple generations down, because I needed to make some stuff. And guess what? I ended up making 200% het hypo stuff, you know, like I was livid, you know, because I had all this work into these multi-recessives. And I go back to him, and I even have all the old emails I saved where he guaranteed it. And he basically just told me, well, too bad. I'm like, you don't understand. It isn't just the money that I spent buying these animals. I wasted dozens of pairings to high-end females.
It's a lot of time.
Yeah. And all those females, I could have been using them for other things or actual advancing my own project. And he had no grasp for anything like that. So I think he offered me a $300 animal as a sorry.
Really?
And then check this out. This gets even worse. So I get this animal and it stood out. It looked nice, but it wasn't the one I picked, right? So he had sent me like a handful of pictures. I picked a certain one and he sends me something different. And like it looked nicer. So I raise it up and I start breeding it. And guess what? This guy sent me on purpose a hypo vanilla, whatever it was, of his line, just as an extra fuck you to me. I'm not kidding. I found out that it was het uncompatible ghost. He did the same thing to me again on purpose. Oh, for sure. He texted me at 2 a.m. one night. I'm a really chill person. Like I communicate really well. Like I type an email up, I'll put a page and I'll explain myself properly. I reread it 10 times to make sure I'm not coming across offensive because I'm not abrasive. That's just not how I am. So I was super nice to him. I linked to all the emails they had sent where they guaranteed the compatibility. And I said, what are we going to do about this? He flipped out on me and he texted me one night at like 2 or 3 in the morning. He was either high on drugs or drunk or something. And he literally lambasted me and said, I'm a big piece of shit and an asshole. I'm like, wait, you screwed me over. I said, where's this coming from? The next day, of course, this is how I knew he was intoxicated somehow. The next day, pages of apologies and this and that. And then instead of fixing it, again, like he could have just sent the money back, done something. He sends me this other animal, his apology, and he does the exact same thing that he did to me the first time. So I had to restart a second time on that same project. So
that's incredible.
Foul, really foul. Yeah, that's like a despicable person. Oh yeah,
yeah.
They're still around. They're still around.
Yeah, they are
selling snakes to people.
We've seen them. We've all had lots of interactions with different breeders, local and otherwise. And what do? We get to know each other. We start talking, and 9 times out of 10, one of the first conversations we have with each other was about the time we got burned, the time when how we learned not to do this, or how we learned how to keep an eye out for this. Another thing that we talk about too is, the people, our mentors, the people that we have around us that we trust. You end up being in these. I don't want to say they're small circles, but they're like rings. And you have that tight ring of people you 100% trust. Then it goes out, and you just you'll bring them in and out. Sometimes you slide them in and out. But the thing is that, and you can attest to this, how it used to be. We talk about this all the time, especially a lot of us old timers. We talk about how cutthroat and horrible it was. To still have that going on today is it's not as, I'm gonna say it's not as bad, but it's worse too at the same time, because you got online scammers now doing, they're straight up stealing people's pictures, whole profiles, and trying to sell these animals for like, rock bottom prices. And there was that time where people were getting emails from random people like, hey, are you interested in this snake? I saw you on a thing. I saw, you commented on somebody's thing, and next thing you know, you have, I'm sorry, I was reading that. I got distracted. I only read the beginning of it and I didn't get finished with it. But you know what I'm talking about.
Was it?
I
think it was that one.
Yep. Jerry explicitly knows the details of that because we've been friends so long that he was there through all those issues I had. And it was bad. It was real bad. It affected him too because we have some projects together. So he had to move stuff that we had shared and made. And it's funny, now he has more vanilla stuff than I do. And I've been beating that drum for like the entire time I've been breeding. So
I love it.
It's painful.
I didn't have with that gene, I didn't have that sore spot. That's spot nose for me. That's another story. That's why I don't have any right now. But it's really unfortunate. It happens to us all. Again, like I said, spot nose. Like for me, it's like I can't do a spot nose right now. I might get some, but that's also shows longevity. You kind of keep moving with the projects that you want to move with. You don't give up. You keep going. You pivot. You try something different. You try something new. And I'm very happy you love vanilla. We can talk about vanilla all day long if you want to. Shoot me. And I think that's part of like these rings of friendships and such, and connections that we have. We have to continue talking to each other and being upfront with each other, as well as our customers too.
Yeah, you brought a bunch of good points up during that. And the one that I found that hits home a lot was the friends in your circle with your mentor. Like when I first started, it was kind of like make friends with everybody. and you find out quickly that a lot of people, there's definitely a diverse mix of crowd in this, and a lot of people aren't real good, and you got to be super careful for theft reasons, for pathogen reasons, for like a myriad of reasons why you have to be really careful with your circle. And that's good advice to new people, I think, that you kind of touched on. Is it's good to socialize, and you can have a lot of acquaintances, and you can help people and talk and stuff, but like people who are like trusted, number one, like they can come to my house, that type stuff. Even now, like doing this as long as I have been, it's less than 2 hands full of people that are probably I trust to come to my house and see my animals, interact with my family, because
it's your house.
Yeah, and it's my livelihood. Like I have like a house's worth of animals, investments into my animals, so like I have to treat it like that. Like I don't know if you were around back then with ball pythons or what, but do you remember Mark Haas?
Sounds familiar.
Mark Haas found Spectre. It was called Spectre and Whirlwind. Like him and another guy kind of found it at the same time. So Spectre breeds to yellow belly complex and makes super stripe animals. Well, when they initially came out, I mean, like a Spectre or a vanilla or a super stripe, I mean, they were like $15,000-$30,000 animals. Mark Haas went to sell some snakes to people and literally got shot up, and they robbed him and stole those from him. He almost died. Like people don't realize,
actually. Yeah,
people don't realize that like when you deal with the kind of money that you have and sometimes in your collection, people won't think twice about that. I mean, someone would rob you for your wallet. They're going to definitely rob you for, possibly 6 figures or more of animals. So you have to take it seriously. And even though it's fun to have friends and it's fun to fraternize with people, you just have to be careful because you don't know unless you do that background work and you find sources who trust them. It's it's people don't take it as seriously as maybe they should, So I've been to like a few breeder gatherings before, and it's fun to socialize, but like then they have like 30 people in their reptile room, and like you don't know where those people came from, where their animals came from, what they were touching before they came over. Like I'm stringent. Like when people come over, I ask that they shower before they come over and change their clothes. I can't have pathogens brought to my house. And so my friends are all super cool, and they understand I'm kind of OCD about that stuff. I mean, like you don't realize that one small mite comes from them that bit an animal they have that's maybe got a virus or something. Well, that drops off and hits my collection. It's going to wipe my collection out, like it's something we don't think about or talk about nearly enough is how to be careful with that kind of stuff. So
yeah, it's like I worked in veterinary medicine for like 15 years, and I'm going, we had lots of animals in quarantine. You have parvo patients. You gown up. You have to gown up. Oftentimes you have one person dealing with those pets because you cannot cross-contaminate. Even if some other animals are vaccinated or maybe they're not, or however, we have these quarantine areas for a reason. And I'm used to that kind of stuff. I got gloves out, all that shit, I'm used to that kind of like that mentality of like that whole cross-contamination and the fact that it's really easy to touch. And then there it is. You just literally from here to here, boom, like it.
Or sponges. One thing people don't think about, sponges. Oh man, like when I first started, I realized right away that sponges and water bowls are like 2 of the biggest ways you can cross-contaminate an entire collection basically on accident in like an afternoon. So I'm deli cups on every animal I own. Like my display animals own their own water bowls, but I only clean them with disposable products. If I need a sponge, I take a sponge and cut it into 6 tiny pieces, and each animal owns its own little piece. Like it's so vital to do those things, and people, it just goes right over people's heads because I don't know if they care or if they even think about that. But like I've never even had a sick animal before that, and obviously I've had animals die just because things don't work right, maybe something inside. But like I've never had a sick animal with a cold, a wheeze, and nothing in the entire time I've kept reptiles, and so I'm really proud of that. And part of the reason why that is that way is because of how I treat my animals, and I treat them all like they own everything in their cage. I don't mix and match things. Even their water couplers that I put my deli cups into, every animal owns its own water coupler. They don't mix and match. I don't throw them in a bathtub and soak them together. I clean that animal's cage. I clean that animal's deli coupler. He gets a fresh water. Like I don't refill couplers because if you're smart, you look at your deli water, you'll see like floaties and stuff in them. That's from their mouth, just from drinking. Like if I refill that over and over, guess what? That's all bacteria growing inside that deli cup. So I go through like boxes and boxes of deli cups. That's actually something I struggle with because it's single-use plastic, and I feel terrible. Like of all the things I do, that's like the worst thing probably for the environment. But it's vital for me to keep my animals as healthy as I possibly can to make sure that nothing cross contaminates. And I think that's another good point.
Just as good.
You got it.
Works just as good as a sponge.
You got it.
I mean, you chuck it and it's gone. Like,
yep.
It really is that thing. You know, it's that thing that you gotta really think about, especially if you got a new animal in. You know, that animal has to sit in quarantine for however long you feel comfortable, whatever, you know, like, but, you know, 30 days, like minimally 30 days. If you like, some people want to go a little earlier than that. I like to go farther than 30, but with 30 days is, I mean, it's okay. But are you making sure you're looking out for all the things you need to look out for? Or are you just leaving in another room for 30 days and then you're going to stick it over there?
You got it.
That's the thing, you know, putting it on paper for 30 days, you know, watching what they go to the bathroom, listening, like all of these different things, you know, for a quarantine animal, they don't, I keep everybody on paper anyway. That's just me. But for a quarantine animal, paper towel, I don't even like paper towel, just paper, just white, you know, just unprinted newspaper is perfect.
And you might treat every animal. It doesn't care whether that comes from a friend or whoever else. I treat every animal that comes to my place. So, and it actually doesn't come to my place. It comes to my offsite place, but they all get treated. It doesn't matter whether it's a friend or whoever. It's just a habit to get into. And I even tell my customers, I said, I can guarantee it doesn't have anything, but I still want you to treat it and treat it like as such, because it's a good habit to get into. So like for me, I forget about them. I say forget about them, but like you'll ask, how long's that been in quarantine? I'll be like, oh, maybe 4 or 5 months. I'll go look and it'll be like 7, 8, 9, 10 months. Like I don't like to fuck around at all with that stuff. So I've had friends who've lost their
area.
Well, that's true too, because if you have other animals in that quarantine, you could lose those as well. And I've been around long enough that I can fill at least a hand and a half probably full of breeders I know who have lost entire collections to pathogens. And everything I just talked about, they didn't do any of that stuff. And so when you see that enough, you start to pick up, this is why I should do this way. And once you start to pick up those good habits, it becomes ingrained. And now I'm like, my red flags go off anytime I see someone like everyone sees YouTube, and man, some of the biggest names in the industry, they have their buddies over with clutches in boxes, and they open boxes in their snake room. Holy shit, man. Like I get nervous for them just watching that, because just because someone's a big name or they've been around a long time does not mean they do things right. So like I could go on right now and probably pick 2 or 3 breeders, and I could show you an unboxing that they did inside a snake room. And that right there tells me that they don't do things the right way. Because I don't just do quarantine for me though, I also do it for my customers. I would feel terrible if I ever gave a customer mites or if I gave them a pathogen. So not only does it protect me, but anyone who buys from me knows that I'm so strict and stringent on that stuff, and you should feel safe buying from me, because I'll go over everything I do to prevent cross-contamination or a possible pathogen being introduced to my collection. So,
yeah. And you know, and accidents happen. Weird things do happen from time to time. But if you can do the best you can to avoid a lot of this, I spoke to someone who was getting in the hobby, I don't know, it was a couple of years ago, and they had a good mindset. You know, they had a room for their animals, and then they had a quarantine room, which was, I think, you know, in the garage or something. You know, that's fine. They're trying. They're doing their thing.
Yeah.
You know,
They
know enough to quarantine. The problem was they bought 2 animals, put them in the quarantine. A month later, they bought another animal, put it in the quarantine. Okay, these 2 are ready to come out. I'm like, yeah, but that new one just went into this quarantine with the other. Like, you just introduced a new animal into your quarantine. You're gonna have to leave them all in there now, because you just. And they didn't quite understand that.
Yeah, reset that clock every time. It's so vital.
Yeah, if you're getting new animals, get them, you know, together or from the same person. Do that quarantine, and then move them out, and then, you know, like, because you're just adding more people for quarantine. Like, they'll never get out if you keep adding more and more animals to, you know, to the quarantine.
Yeah, we had a lady give us a snake that she didn't want anymore at in the January show. We did 90 days on it, and then we even did
we had it tested.
Yeah, we sent in a test for what was it, Nido, and
I don't remember.
I can't remember the other one.
But yes.
But just to be on the safe side of that, because I mean the animal looked great, but I still didn't want to do it. We don't even have that high of a value of a collection. It's just what needs to be done to protect what you do have.
And that person brought up a good point in chat as well about picking up mites during shipping. And then another one is the convenience of a pet store. So it's great to grab things at a pet store, but guess what? Like that substrate there could be exposed to who knows what. Mm-hmm. So you have to be super careful, like where even your supplies come from for stuff like that. So like it's to me, it's a risk I take just getting substrate for like my other invertebrates and other things. I have to be so careful where my stuff comes from. There's some of these big warehouse shippers that like not once, but twice, but like a whole bunch of times I've read about people getting substrate and then getting mites and other things from that because they have animals, they have warehouses, and unfortunately that they're going to end up inside that stuff. So you have to be super careful, whether that's pet stores, whether it's shipping supplies, you name it. It's something you should think about if you're serious about breeding and being professional.
And getting trying to find the best place to get what you need. It's yes, again, it's getting a lot easier. It's a lot easier now than it used to be, of course, but there's a lot of competition too, which I don't know if that's good or bad. Let's just look at cocoa. How many cocoa brands are there? How many people are selling cocoa? Where are they sourcing it from? Is the cocoa craze so high that they're being sourced horribly and we don't know it? Like I don't know this. I don't use cocoa. Again, kind of just like you, I'm a little paranoid about shit. Everybody's on paper. Everybody's on paper because
I'm paper too. Other than display animals, I'm on paper too. My entire collection's on paper. So
I don't mind it. Do I have to clean it more often? Yeah. But I don't mind it because I have to. It allows me to see this animal again.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It allows me to see what's happening.
And it keeps you honest. That's the big thing with cocoa. It's easy to be like spot clean. Yep. And then you don't realize that urate and everything else proliferated that entire area of substrate. So like you think it's just wet from you spraying it down. Well, guess what? That's urate. So then you've got bacteria growing. So it's real easy to just kind of look the other way. And I'm not saying everybody does that, but I know a lot of people do that where it's like they just throw in a little extra, pull out a scoop, and it's like you can't do that. Like I used to have to take like half a tub of cocoa out, clean that part of the tub, then throw new cocoa in anywhere that looked wet, and it ended up being even more work for me than just paper where I can just pull the paper out, spray it on my tub, wipe it out, new paper, and I'm back ready to rock and roll much faster than I would. So to do it right, it takes more time, I guess is my point.
Does. And I'm not shitting on cocoa at all. Like I don't
No, me either.
Cocoa for years. I had it for years.
It works well. The animals like it.
They do. And you know what? In a way, is paper more, I wouldn't say it was more work. It's more time consuming, like it's easy. Just take it out, you spray it down, you keep, you do all the maintenance that you do to make sure it's clean. Then you put a fresh sheet down. And in a weird old school way, when I put that, I love that fresh sheet, putting that nice fresh sheet down, and that nice clear cup of water, everything, and I think that also comes from like working in medicine for so many years, just everything being just like, nice and neat.
Yep.
And that's kind of like my little joy.
It keeps it easy. So like, it's real easy to stay on top of, like if your animal has a problem, if they have a weird stool, if they have a weird everything, it's so much easier to identify that on paper than it is any other way. So I would say anytime, like, cause think about it, when something goes wrong, you're treating mites, what do? You put them on paper anyway. So like you make it simple to treat a problem. So for me, it just pays off for me to keep it simple all the time, especially maybe for the amount of animals I have. So
yeah, I know for us, the switching to paper saved me time because I would strain all the dust out of the cocoa. So that took me an hour and a half per every time I did that. And then we'd store it in tubs and then you'd take it out and we'd soak it. I mean, the paper's just way faster.
And then guess what? So I end up allergic to cocoa.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm cleaning, and I'm like, man, I feel a scratch in my throat, and I feel my lungs tighten up a little bit.
See,
so
I'm
I put two and two together. Yeah, just talking about it, we're over here itching.
Yeah, it was.
So I ended up allergic to it.
I was masking it.
Oh, so
yeah, I had to
Josh,
go
us, I got it right here. I have the snake room is one of the spare bedrooms in the house. It's right next to my son, and I had it for years. And he has really bad allergies, and I felt like it wasn't helping. The smell, the dust, and so on. Definitely wasn't helping me. I'm not a big fan of it, of that either. But ever since I got rid of it, I feel like he's gotten a lot better. He has, he still has other allergies and so on. But,
sure.
I do think that it's helped not having it in the house.
What paper do you guys use? Like, do you
go
use?
first?
Me, I actually am super simple. I have Select-A-Size Kirkland paper towels. I used to put like a small amount in there, and now I've gotten a little less cheap. So I like multi-layers in case there's like a big urate or a big mess. It soaks it up so they're not in fluid or anything. Mm-hmm. So I've used butcher paper before, but then it's time consuming for me because I'd have to take a saw and I cut it all down to the perfect sizes, and then I cut it per tub as I'm doing it, and so it ended up taking longer. So I've done that, and butcher paper works great, or like construction paper. You can buy rolls of it and cut it to size. That's what I used to do when I had a smaller collection, but it got time intensive for me. So now I'm actually paper towels exclusively. So,
what about you, Angel?
I use unprinted newspaper. I buy it by the roll from Amazon or wherever I can find it. I have a butcher cutter, like the paper cutter. So I just buy, I think it's like 1,400 feet. 1,500 feet, something like that, and it's 18 inches wide, which is perfect. It's just 18 inches wide. It's a perfect length. I just pull it out, rip it, put one down, pull it out, rip it. I just put a couple sheets down, and in the tubs, it might curl up a little bit on the side. I like clear tubs. I have most of these like kind of like semi-clear tubs. I don't.
Me too.
I don't keep the gray tubs in the I have a Freedom Breeder. I don't have gray tub. I have the clear or the semi-clears. Because I like to know that they're not in the front waiting to get me. So I'm kidding, but I like it helps me. It's a good quick because you'll see if you see a lot of condensation.
Yep,
you'll leave
condensation's the big
pushed
thing.
up against the side.
Oh yeah,
these things.
Yep.
To me, it's helpful, and also the biggest reason I have clear tubs is if there is a problem with the thermostat and every single one of these fuckers is pushed up against the side, I can see it right away. Right away. Yeah. So that's why I like the clearer tubs, but paper I get just unprinted newspaper, the 18-inch cutter, it works perfectly.
Our dog is going crazy. She's a hoot. She just tried to jump out of Kurt's arms, and Kurt caught her, and now he's trying to get her in the kennel, and she's really fast. She got right up. We use Kirkland signature paper towels as well, and we have Reptisorb liners for some of them. But
That's right. You guys use the liners. Those are cool.
I've used those too.
We would love to have clear tubs, but we were fortunate enough to come across these racks, and they came with these tubs. So here we are. But we love the semi-clear tubs because you can see so quickly the moisture in there and know immediately probably who needs to be changed or
I'm on the fence with the Reptisorb liners because I don't think they're that much better than paper towels. They just fit the bins better.
They're convenient.
Yeah, they are convenient. They're very convenient.
Change. It's a really fast change.
Yeah. In fact, we just got down to and we just got down to this rack. We just are down to the last two liners and just realized it because we talked about ordering them last week and both of us thought we had ordered them and we didn't order them. Oops. So then he's like, we just have two left. I'm like, oh no. So good old Kirkland paper towels sitting over here ready to go.
They're great, and those paper towels they fit perfectly in a
they
6 quart. If you put if you have a 6 quart, perfect.
15 quarts, 32s, 41s.
They fit perfect.
Just stretch it out.
Mm-hmm. I like the newspaper, the unprinted newspaper, because they if it gets wet, it actually doesn't fall apart. It holds pretty well, considering. And then you just wrap it up and check it.
Yep. Quick change.
Do you have anything in your incubator right now?
Me? No. The last clutch I hatched, I had about 3 came out at the same time. I hit my first clown pieds with this last clutch. I made some GHI ghost stuff het pied that came out pretty recently. I made some more high OD ghost combo animals, and I made some GHI desert ghost het ghost stuff. And then what else is there? Oh, I have a trio of hypo double het DG pied animals that recently hatched. But at the current moment, nothing, which is pretty uncommon for me. I might have a month where something isn't in my incubator, but now I'm going on quite a few months. And part of it's because I changed my breeding recipe a little bit. So I've kind of had to reset everybody. And and part of it was because of transferring from live to frozen over the past year and a half, 2 years. It took a little bit of a step back because, like Angel pointed out earlier, it's vital to feed your animals, to breed your animals.
Yep.
And so I had a collection that had lived off of live for probably close to a decade, right over that. And when I just got frustrated. I couldn't get reliable rodents from anybody. I used to get run through the ringer and people would lie to me. We'd sit down and have a business conversation and I'd stress how important it is that I get consistent rodents, and it'd work good for like a real short amount of time. And then it ends up being, well, you got to come next week. I'll have them next week. And then it's, well, I'll come back in a couple of weeks. We'll be all set. And then it's, I'm expanding. So we'll be ready for you. And like, I got fed so many lines for so long, and I resisted frozen because in my head, I thought it would be like really difficult. And honestly, now that I do it, it's so much easier than dealing with live. Like I don't have rodents running around my room if they escape. I can feed anytime I want. I can keep a freezer just packed full of rodents in my garage. So I've got, mini feedings on hand. And then the big thing is I went probably most the entire time I fed feeding live. So we're talking thousands and thousands of meals. And I finally, after that, I had within about a month of each other, I had 2 super, super bad accidents. And it wasn't like I left a rat in there and they ate the snake like that I've seen happen. I've seen people do that. In my specific instance, it was like a super freak accident. I had a rat bite a snake through the mouth and the eyeball twice within like 3 weeks, and I'd never had anything but maybe small bites and scrapes once in a while, which is never a big deal. The snakes are fine. Yeah. I had that happen twice within about 3 weeks, and I was like, you know what? Maybe I should probably start looking at frozen. And in coupling with that, with the rodent problem, I just finally said, screw it. And so I converted everybody over, but it definitely created a bit of lull in my breeding just because not everybody converts easily. The easiest ones to convert are females that lay because they come back so ravenous. So they're like, no problem. They lay a clutch and I guarantee they'll eat frozen right after that. And then the ones that were the hardest for me, which set me back a little bit, were kind of like my holdbacks, kind of that medium size where they're subadults. They tend to be the hardest for me because they're not building. So like a building female will eat almost anything. You could have a sock that smelled like a rat and they'd wrap it up. The subadult won't do that though. They tend to be much more picky. And like when they were used to live meals, they kind of said, what's this? What's this frozen ratsicle?
And that's also like at that time where like, what do they call it? They hit the wall anyway.
Yeah.
So that's a tough time to like mess around with food with them.
Yeah. They're a little finicky
they just
already.
Stop eating anyway,
Yep. And so that set me back a bit because I like to, the only way I replace my breeders is if I have a new snake to replace that snake. So like, I don't replace breeders very often. You'll see a lot of people just like constantly have breeders for sale. Like I have some of my foundational animals that I bought like over a decade ago. They still are active and breeding with me because like Angel talked about earlier, part of the reason why my quality's there is because I line breed. Like my orange ghost, I'm so finicky about what I cross into that. So like when I cross a different line of ghost from someone else into that, if those babies come out and they're not up to what I already make, I get rid of all that stuff. I get rid of whatever parent made that. I get rid of all that clutch and I restart. And it's a little over the top. I realize that a lot of people kind of don't either A, can't afford to do that, or B, just don't have the patience to do that. But it's super important. And that's why you consistently produce quality. Because if you understand how line breeding works, the whole point is to get a consistent average that's at that standard that you're looking for. And now, don't get me wrong, I still produce a substandard snake once in a while that I don't like, and you still produce ones that are even nicer that I don't know what's going on, but maybe something even better. But your whole goal should always be to get that average high as you can possibly get it so that you consistently produce. And so that was just a point you had talked about line breeding. I recalled that was important. And I don't think a lot of people do that. So like in my collection, I have like great grandparents that are still here. And that entire project comes back to those animals. And so I can continue to use them to add animals to that project, which for me is really big because I know what to expect from their babies. I know the quality that they make. I know how well they eat because people will tell you otherwise, but there's some genetics to how they eat as well. Like I know for a fact when I have trouble eaters, frequently their babies could end up that same way, whether that's something to do with a morph, it's something to do with some other genetic trait that's going on. Mm-hmm. And so it's important to me that not only does that snake look good, but it also thrives, So, yeah.
wanted to go back to one thing that you keep saying orange ghost, and I find that really important. I find it important because we see hypomelanistic, we see hypo a lot, and that's what it is, hypomelanistic,
Yep.
And you remember back in the day we had orange ghost, yellow ghost, green ghost, whatever, run the gamut with the ghost. And I've always been a big fan of orange ghost, and those who continue to not just label it, but like work with orange ghost. Like it's orange ghost, not just a hypo. It's not just, I got this hypo, I'm putting hypo in. I'm a big fan of orange ghost. I again, going old school, I have orange ghost. I have a shit ton of orange ghost. And my orange ghost line, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's East Coast. I got it before I moved out here. So that male, I still have the male, the original male is still here though. He's old. He still breeds. He's an old guy. But he's from I used to do the White Plains shows. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe I got him from a breeder who got him his line from the Kick Brothers. And the Kick Brothers got it from Nerd.
Yep. And that's what I'll trace this back to is Nerd. So
yeah. Yep. And all like that orange ghost. You know that they're just deep. They're just gorgeous. When you see someone who continues to talk and say orange ghost, and they're saying, they know that that's what they're working with. Like they purposely are working with not just hypo, orange ghost. And when you see that, you fucking see orange ghost. You see that shit. Remember the butterscotch orange ghost? I feel like today, if you are continuously working with a line of orange ghosts, especially one that you can trace back, it's almost like that's the new butterscotch in a way. Like that's the only way we're gonna get that butterscotch.
Yeah,
I don't even know where that shit went.
Butterscotch came from Brian Sharp, and I actually have some of that stuff that I've outcrossed into my orange ghost, and man, the results are just incredible. They're very consistent with what you would expect from a high quality orange ghost. So yeah, you bring up another great point, which is lineage, and so I'm huge on that. So pretty much every snake in my collection, I know exactly where it came from. I know where the parents came from. I know the breeders. I know what they bred to make it. I know the lines of specific things that they use. I take that stuff super seriously. And for the reasons you just brought up, it really falls back to me to just quality and standards. And so I know the lineage of my animals, so I know what's working and what's not. And I know how to eliminate that if it's not producing the things that I want, or I know to emphasize that if it is producing the things that I want to see. So I'm weird about that stuff, but like every animal I have, I even know, like the breeders, I'll ask where they came from, where the animals came from that produced the snake I'm buying from them. And I get as much history as I possibly can on that, because it's important, because sometimes something will happen that you don't expect, whether that's a good or a bad thing. And you can then, with that lineage, I can then say, oh, it probably traced back to this, and I'll do a little more digging and I'll figure out, hey, this is probably where it came from. And I've had other genes pop up in my collection that are because I pay attention to things like that. And then usually I can find out where it came from and what parent had it, and I can trace it back to originally where it came from, which is why I know that, Brian Sharp's butterscotch is in a lot of my animals on purpose.
If you can do that, if you can do that, you have a leg up, because on top of that too, with the knowledge that you have, and questions that, people can ask, if you're buying an animal, let's say this animal is orange ghost, whatever, I was just going to say it's an orange ghost. And you're like, okay, where'd you get it from? They're like, oh, I got it from this person who, it's this particular line. And then you stop for a second and you're like, wait a second, I know that line. They got something that's a little funky that keeps popping up here and there, or it's not 100% compatible, or I've heard that particular line was, a messy kind of these are things that I remember from back in the day. There were a lot of things that got not like look at the what is it, the desert, the desert, what was it, Desert Ghost, not Desert Ghost, Desert Ball,
Desert.
Right?
Oh yeah, that whole fiasco. I won't get started on that, but
yeah, that's a whole other thing. We're about to run out of time. But that in itself, that was another thing that people knew about, but they didn't give a shit. They were still selling.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
That was probably one of the worst ones, man.
It is, and they so many people were taken for money on that. They're taken for a ride and empty promises of cool your temperatures more and do this and do that. It was all bullshit, and they knew it was bullshit, and they were just feeding people stuff so they could sell more snakes. And then when that quit failing, man, they had a terrible fire, man. And I'm really sorry all those animals lost their lives, but it brings up some questions about that even. So
there's a lot of like weird old school like not myths. Let's not say myths, but like old school like talkings that were like floated around that nobody really like wanted to like hammer down. And I think a lot of that stuff sticks with me, and I get really like I kind of remember where that came from. I might not want to jump on that.
One of my good friends actually did the first surgery on a desert female that was egg bound, and he actually discovered the restriction in their tubes, basically where the follicles are developed. He posted all the pictures up. He did the surgery. He took pictures all throughout surgery. This is the same friend of mine actually that I talked about earlier. He posted all that up and shared all that info with everybody, and they still poo-pooed him even after sharing pictures. They literally showed the follicles and the eggs. There's no room to get through that. There's no room to get through that tube. They just would never have ever worked. And so he put pictures, he posted them up, and people still talked crap about him. He was being transparent. He believed in the project too. He had invested quite a bit of money in it. But as soon as that happened with his female, he took her in, he had that surgery done, he documented everything, which is how science is done, and he shared it with everybody. And guess what? No one believed him, and they still were selling those snakes.
Because it's that thing, people want to, they don't want to believe it because they either invested so much money or they don't want to look, stupid. I don't think you look stupid when you admit, not that you made a mistake, but that you were part of this thing that didn't work. It doesn't mean that you're wrong. It doesn't mean you're a bad breeder. It doesn't mean you're a bad person, a business person. It doesn't mean any of that shit. Because we all know that things happen in this hobby. Being transparent with yourself, first of all, is probably what you really need, where you need to start. But we all get burned. It's okay to say, look, I got burned, or I made an investment, it didn't work out. But so did 100 other people. They also made investments that didn't work out, and that's okay. But I'm not going to deny what I'm seeing. This is the truth. This is the reality of it. We need to admit that this is what it is, and let's move on. And a bunch of people, if you lost money on it, I'm sorry. And we've all lost money on different things too, because we believed in something that we thought was going to work. But that's also part of like taking the chance. You take a chance on a new gene. You don't know what it's going to look like. It could be nothing. The Viper Ball, Brian Barczyk's Viper Ball, $75,000 for nothing. It's a cool looking snake. And we've learned from stuff like that. If you're listening to these stories and you're paying attention to what these people who laid the groundwork for us, like, listen to these stories. We don't have to make the same mistakes.
No, we don't.
No. And I know we're coming to an end here, but Brian, if you would ever be willing to go on with us again, I think we should have you and Ryan on with us.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Sure. Yeah, it sounds like fun. I enjoy this stuff, so I don't get as much time to do it as I used to. But as long as we set it up in advance, I can always try to make time for it. So
awesome. That would be great. I know I asked Ryan if he could join us this time, and he was like, "Oh man, I'm going to be on a plane." And I said, "Ryan, that sounds like where you need to be, not alive with us, even though we'd love it." But no, Brian, this was really great getting to know you, and I look forward, and we look forward, all of us, I'm sure, to getting to know you more. So. You're a wealth of knowledge.
Well. And not only just a wealth of knowledge, you're a great guy.
Yeah, you are.
This has been awesome.
It was fun.
Easy to talk to.
It was nice to meet you guys as well. I can't believe I had never heard of Angel before, and we're this close to each other. So Ryan had mentioned you in passing at some point, and I was like, I'm not familiar with him, and I should have been, because it sounds like we're on the same page on a lot of stuff, and we have a lot of similar thoughts on things. So it's been really good talking to you and meeting you as well.
Yeah, I've had people mention you to me because of Vanilla. They were like, "Oh, you don't know him?" And I was like, I've heard of him, but like, I don't just reach out to people like, "Hey, I heard you got Vanilla." Like, I didn't want to, and I'm like, I'll probably bump into him at a show or this or that or whatever. But it was something that I was looking forward to, because I was like, this is another person who sounds like he's been, doing this as long as me. He has the same kind of like ideas about certain things. It's fine, especially after talking to Ryan. But there's a lot of us out here that probably don't realize how close I live. Like Dylan from These Balls and Exotics. I didn't know he lives literally 2 minutes down the road. He's right down the. And one day I breed my own rats, but I don't need jumbos. I don't need the adults. He's got berms. And I was like, I know this guy's local. I'm going to hit him up. And I called him. I was like, hey, you want 2 garbage bags of frozen rats? He was like, what? Sure. And he just showed up. And that's it. We've been friends ever since. I go on vacation. He comes here. He watches he goes and he takes care of my stuff for me, And like.
He's a good guy. He's a good local guy.
It's great. It's great to do that. And then we're talking and we're like, we didn't know that we were this close. We didn't know, and the only reason I contacted him, not totally just because I needed to unload some rats, but a person that bought rats from me bought a snake from him and said that he was such an amazing person because he was trying to buy a snake from somebody and they kept overlooking him and they were kind of like treating him a certain way. He was like, okay, whatever, I'll leave. But then he went to Dylan and Dylan was all like, hey, how you doing? Like talking to him and his daughter and went through all this stuff, took his time and did all of these great things with him. And I was like, see, I don't mind giving a guy like that 2 garbage bags full of frozen rats. Like he can totally have them. And then we've been friends ever since. And that's part of that, getting those rings into your hobby, and he's great. And he introduced me to Tucker, and Tucker's a great friend. And like we do shows together. I don't know if you know Tucker from Purple Rain. He also does green tree pythons and stuff too.
I'm not familiar.
Great. I'll send you his info. Check him out. Contact him. Great dude. Great guy. He's right out of Oregon. So
and also believes in cleanliness and
yes, his collection is immaculate. Like I've been to his house several times, immaculate. Like I make little mini snake hooks, and he has one for each Neo, because he's like, I don't want to cross. He doesn't cross contaminate, even though they're all from the same clutch. You all know how Neos can be. He has everything separate.
He sounds like he's even more over the top than I am, but it's a
good
way to be.
Yeah, it's a good way to be. Probably have a lot to talk about. He's also into like all of the history of the green tree. I have learned so much on just history alone from him. It's you guys will be on the phone forever. Trust me, he's great.
Well, thank you guys for a great Saturday, and Brian, thank you again, and we look forward to doing this again.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Absolutely, thank you. And we hope you have a great rest of your weekend. And thank you, your wife and your girls, for sharing you for a little bit.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I will go thank them.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take care, guys.